Welcome everybody, here I am in Paris. It's around 8 o'clock in Paris, and I suggest to speak about which economic growth for which energy mix 2050. You will see it's more adapted to the Europe energy transition than the world energy transition. But I would say that all what I say here can be applied essentially on OECD countries, probably a little less on emergent countries, but more generally, it's applied everywhere. So first of all, I would like to emphasize on the fact that the energy transition will be a big replacement of thermal equipment with electric equipment. In fact, as you can see here, for instance, in the transportation, we will replace thermal car by electric car or by hydrogen car, hydrogen itself being made with electricity. In housing, thermal heat system will be replaced by heat pumps working with electricity, and even in the industry, some thermal process like in iron or in cement can be replaced by electricity. In France, we consider that today the consumption of electricity is around, as you can see here, 450 terawatt hour. That is around 30% of the final energy. And in 2050, this amount will increase to 800 terawatt hours. That is 60% of the final energy. And the big question effectively is where does this electricity will come from? I would like first to define the different type of electricity, to come back on value of energy, because all the energy have not the same value. The first value for energy is, of course, the energy content, the concentration of energy. You can see here the comparison between a bath which is heated and the same heat which has been spread over the room. Of course, in the first case, you have a high energy content, which is the case for uranium, the case for coal, the case for oil, or the case for gas. In the second case, we have a low energy content, will be the case for wind, will be the case also for sun. And so we can see that all the energy have not the same value in terms of energy content. There are high energy content and low energy content. And of course, high energy content have a higher value than a low energy content. The second value is controllability. In fact, we have two types of energy. The first type of energy is energy which is storable and transportable. It means that when it's storable and transportable, I can have energy where I want, when I want, as much as I want. Whereas, what is important to understand is that matter is storable and transportable. When you have a liter of oil, you can store it and you can transport it easily. Whereas energy is not storable and also difficult to transport. When you start to burn a liter of oil, it's not at all the same case. You have to consume the energy immediately. If you don't consume the energy immediately, it's lost. Whereas when you have matter, you can wait any time. You preserve your amount of energy, which is included in the matter. And of course, stock energy, that is matter, which has a high energy content, are also controllable. So uranium, oil, coal, and gas. Whereas flux energy, that is energy that you recover on the form of energy and not on the form of matter, have not only a low energy content, but are not controllable. It means that you cannot store it or difficult to store it and difficult to transport. The third is what is called intermittence according to time. For instance, when you look at sun, you can see here it's sun in France. You can see that the peak of sun is in fact the counter peak of demand. So the peak of sun is in summer, the peak in demand is in winter. And so you have really an opposition of phase between the sun production and the sun or the electricity demand. So a little bit better for wind. But you have here a clear example. It's 26 January 2022, and you can see that when you have a peak of demand at 7 o'clock in the evening, you have no sun and practically no wind. So it means that in the typical January day at 7 o'clock in the evening, wind plus sun in France represented 30 gigawatt of power, but only 1.7 gigawatt of 1.7 not gigawatt percent of electricity production. And so in that case, you need, of course, 100% backup. So where does electricity will come from? You have 5 possibilities of electricity, yes, 5 possibilities of electricity. Coal, we don't want any more coal because it emits a lot of CO2. In France, difficult for extension of hydroelectricity. As you can see here, the investment in nuclear and renewable are extremely different. We don't invest in renewable, and so renewable will not be extended a lot in the future. And so remain, in fact, 2 possible sources of electricity, which is renewable and gas. And we can see that in the world, over the last 10 years, we have in fact invested nearly $5,000 billion in renewable for 1,950 gigawatt, whereas as you can see in nuclear, the investment were relatively small, and so was 150 billion of euro in France, 800 billion of euro in Germany. So we have, at least in Europe, definitively chosen the couple gas and renewable. The consequence is that gas and renewable carry today the electric demand in Europe. Between 2014 and 2021, you can see here the electricity by source. Electricity from coal has been reduced by 60%, which is really a good news. By nuclear was minus 10%, whereas gas and renewable have strongly increased their part in electricity. So it's the delta. It's not the total, of course, as you can see here. So between 2014 and 2041, the part of gas in electricity has increased by 54%, whereas in renewable by 76%. And so today in Europe, at least, gas is the best friend of renewable. And so it has boosted the global gas demand by 20% between 2014 and 2021. This is here the global European gas increase of European gas demand, whereas the 54% was only the part in electricity. So if we increase the gas demand, we would have seen increase in oil and gas investment. And in fact, it was not necessarily what happened. The European gas demand was increased by 20%, but worldwide, the investment in gas and oil has strongly decreased, divided by more than 2 between 2014 and 2021. You can see here that the investment were $780 billion in 2014 and only 350 in 2021. There are many reasons for that. Complexity of new field, of course, chillness of oil companies with respect to invest in oil and gas because they invest more in renewable and electricity, but also very important in Europe, the pressure of NGOs on banks not to anymore invest in oil and gas. And so the consequences are easy to understand. We have an increase of gas demand due to the increase of demand of gas and electricity, a decrease of investment, that is a decrease of offer, increase of demand and decrease of offer, of course, result in increase of gas price. And we have also an impact on electricity because of probably, you know, what is called the merit order law in electricity is that you implement the different sources of electricity from the cheapest to the more expensive. And the more expensive today is gas, and is the more expensive that makes the price of electricity. And so, as you can see here, the high price of gas makes the price of electricity very high in Europe. So, to compare with United States, the gas in Europe is 10 times higher than the price of gas in United States, and the price of electricity is completely, I would say, crazy, because you negotiate today in the raw market of electricity, the price of the megawatt hour sometimes around 500 euro per megawatt hour at the highest hours of electricity demand. Alors, of course, the Ukrainian war was the cherry on the cake, because according to the fact that the European gas demand has strongly increased, the European gas production has, on the contrary, strongly decreased. As you can see here, the gas production in Europe was still 30% of the gas demand in Europe in 2010. It's only 10% today. So in fact, we are in Europe today. In the United States, we are fully dependent in terms of gas. In Europe, we are dependent on 90% on our importation of gas. And the easiest importation of gas, because we didn't want to develop our gas, and especially shale gas in Europe, is of course Russian gas importation. Russian gas importation increased from 26% in 2010 to 42% in 2020, which means that the decrease in gas production in Europe was compensated by an increase of gas import from Russian gas in Europe. So the 42% in terms of gas means 160 billion cubic meters a year. This is what we import the whole Europe from Russia. And the LNG market today is in the range of 500 BCM. 500 BCM, 70% of which goes to South Asia, and only 21% today to Europe. So it would mean that if we wanted to replace the 160 billion cubic meters of gas imported from Russia, we route LNG into Europe, it means that approximately half of what goes to South Asia would have to come in Europe, which is absolutely impossible. So we are today in a very tricky condition in terms of gas supply in Europe. So from where this electricity will come from? So I don't believe in this type of electricity mix. So it's here an example. This is the map of France. You have a lot of wind in the southwest of France and a lot of sun in southeast of France, in the Riviera, if someone of you have already been in Cannes or in Nice. And I don't believe in the fact that at the scale of a country, we can use wind from southwest and sun from southeast to provide and to supply the whole country, even with the supply of hydroelectricity, which is relatively important in France, and even with the storage with batteries. I don't believe in this possibility. So what I advise is that, of course, we keep the sun and the wind where it is, but we use it as a local supply of energy. Local supply of energy also in the future to produce hydrogen, because if you use renewable to produce hydrogen, in fact, you store in some way electricity, and you can use all the capacity of sun and wind to produce hydrogen. You also avoid some troubles in the electricity network, because the instability and the intermittence of renewable can make a lot of trouble in the electricity network. And so the lack of electricity because of the intermittence of wind and sun, we compensate by thermal, which can be small thermal units. Whereas where we don't have any sun and any wind, we continue to use thermal. The small unit can be gas, but can be also in the future small modular reactor, so small modular nuclear reactor. And of course, in the north of France, where we don't have sun and also little amount of wind, we will use a big unit of nuclear. And so the mix would be 35% of renewable, 15% of hydroelectricity, which already exists. So if you sum, it's half of renewable and half of thermal share between gas and nuclear, because we will not be able to produce in 2050 all the half of the 800 terawatt hour by nuclear. So the target 800 terawatt hour. The remaining nuclear in France will be 15 gigawatts in 2050. We have today 60, but a lot of current power plants which have already age of 40 years will be retired in 2050. We keep the 26 gigawatt of hydro, and the big challenge of the government, this is the numbers which have been proposed in the big speech of Emmanuel Macron in February this year. He proposed to double the amount of onshore wind and to increase, there is no wind marine today in France, to increase from 0 to 40 gigawatt the marine, which is around 4,000 units. He also proposed to multiply by 10 the solar, whereas he proposed to build 14 units of third generation nuclear reactor. And if you look at that, which is already extremely ambitious, you don't have enough electricity, and you have still to add 20 units of gas, so around 20 gigawatt of gas with a combined cycle, which means that you will recover 34% of nuclear, 50% of renewable, and 16% of gas. Exactly what I have shown you in the previous slide. That is half of renewable and half of controllable electricity, is a big part of nuclear and a short part of gas. So as a conclusion, the 2050 growth will not be green, but will be, I would say, a rainbow. So as you can see here, we will have renewable, green. We will have also nuclear, yellow. We will have gas, blue, and we will still have very probably also a little bit oil, probably no more coal, which means that in the 2050 European mix, we will still have in the range of 20 to 40% of fossil fuel. And so if we want really to compensate, we have no other way than to compensate either with trees or either with CCUS, that is carbon capture. Thank you very much. I think I I kept my my time relatively easy.
Maybe we can move to questions.
I don't know if there are questions. I think there are questions in the discussion, no?
Yeah, under question and answers. There is
no question. No, it's okay.
No, there is one. The first one is written in French, so I
written in French. Where?
Open up Q&A.
Yes. Sorry, it's not discussion.
Yeah, it's first one is written in French, so I would leave it to you to read.
I think that the question is that he or she didn't understand my graph relative to sun and energy consumption, which decrease in summer instead of utilization of air conditioning or any other apparatus to production of cold. So peak of consumption even in estival period. It's probably valid for United States, but the amount of air conditioning in France is extremely low. So I would say that the amount of electricity consumed in summer in France, according to air conditioning, it's extremely small, and this is the reason why that in summer the amount of electricity consumed is extremely small compared to winter. A lot of heat in winter, extremely small air conditioning in summer.
Very good.
For the person?
Yeah, I don't see any other questions here.
Particularly in Paris, for instance, there are no buildings which are equipped with air conditioning. Extremely uncommon.
Well, do you project that this will change in the future? We saw London, for example, getting record high temperature this summer. We saw this similar
very probably. I have an example here in Paris in my building where my neighbor just below me asked to install air conditioning, but I think it's one of the only one in the district. So there is no more yet. I would say inclination about that, but it could come.
I can tell you in California, when I lived in California 40 plus years ago, buildings did not have air conditioning. Now new buildings all have air conditioning because temperature has increased, especially during summer. So that may change even in Paris. I liked your idea of the energy content. Dr. Farouk Ali and I wrote a similar paper dealing with various energy sources, and we refer to it as more like, rather than content, we refer to it as density of energy in a barrel of oil versus
it's not only the quality. I would say that a high quality energy, it's high concentration, high energy content, high energy density, transportability and storability.
Absolutely.
Transportability and storability are very linked together because if you can store it, you can transport it easily. The best way, because sometimes some people disagree about that, if you compare gas and oil, to stay in the fossil fuel, the big advantage of oil compared to gas, it's easy transportability. If gas was as easily transportable as oil, I think the gas crisis would not exist in Europe because of Russia.
Very good. I think we took most of our time already. Thank you very much for the presentation.
It was probably too short, no?
No, it was just perfect.
Okay.
And
No
it's
other
good to
question?
see you. It's good to see you again. I think last time you and I met was long time ago in Oklahoma.
I know. Long time ago. Ali is well?
Dr. Ali Danashi is doing very well. Absolutely.
Okay. You tell him all my feelings to him.
Very good. Thank you. I shall tell him that. Excellent.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.